I feel very comfortable in my standing as president of the Beckett Fund for Religious Liberty, but when it comes to SRI, you may legitimately wonder why I'm up here with these men who have thought so carefully on the topic. I have not. But speaking of the Supreme Court, whenever the possibility of mediocrity comes into play, you have to remember Senator Hruska's famous quote when it came to Harold Carswell, claiming or answering the claim that Carswell was mediocre, which he probably was. Hruska answered, "So what if he's mediocre? There are a lot of mediocre people and they deserve representation." Now don't laugh. I am here because many of you are mediocre, and these fine gentlemen wanted me to speak to you. I have been asked, and I am willing to take the stand, that there is no real way of performing socially responsible investing, and I intend to do that by taking the clown's position, which is to take a very simple chain of reasoning or a simple example and show you how this topic is overwhelmed by complexity and made, as a consequence, irrelevant. So this might have seemed a little more humorous before this morning's decision. Imagine the president is elected to a second term. He appoints 2 more justices to the Supreme Court. That's what I have in my notes. I guess he only needs 1 more. The Hyde Amendment is overturned or repealed, and the federal government decides to make abortion on demand free for everyone, something they spend unlimited federal dollars for. Now, here is what I posit to you as individual investors or money managers. Planned Parenthood announces that it will spin off its abortion business as a standalone profitable business with this new influx of federal money and abortion on demand freely paid for. Do you, as the private equity investor, are you permitted to invest in that company? We follow down the chain. The private equity investors fund Planned Parenthood, creating this monstrous for-profit business, and it's about to go public. Are you, the investor, allowed to buy it? After all, your funds will go directly to Planned Parenthood, or, just as bad, to the private equity investors who funded its first stage. Even if you're going to flip it, does it matter if you're just going to hold it for an hour? Because you know it'll pop, being certainly a hot IPO. Are you allowed to make that profit from the buy and the sell of Planned Parenthood on that first hour? It goes public. It's trading in the secondary market. All right, now it's just an ordinary stock. Can you buy that? After trading for a year, Starbucks buys it because they have a great concept. Lattes and abortion, clinic, Starbucks, shared real estate. Should you sell your Starbucks stock if you own it? I'll color all those red, as in code red. I think they're low-hanging fruit, the easy decision. We don't have to struggle. You should not participate in any of those. As a money manager, as an individual investor, you should stay away. But let's go into code orange. It's not Starbucks that buys Planned Parenthood, it's General Electric. It's not Starbucks integrating all its operations with Planned Parenthood clinics. It's just a monster conglomerate with $150 billion in revenue that wants a little medical company to go with it. Do you sell your General Electric? How about this one? Biogen becomes a supplier of essential testing kits for Planned Parenthood. It makes 3, 4, 5+% of its revenue from its Planned Parenthood. After all, the government is funding abortions for everyone. Should you sell Biogen? I'll color those orange. I think they're pretty low-hanging fruit as well. I think you should sell GE. I think you should sell Biogen. But now, let's go to the next one. It's not Biogen who's a supplier, it's GE. And it's ordinary items, gloves, tools, etc. And it's 0.1% of GE's revenue. Do you have to sell GE now? It's put in the S&P 500. Do you have to sell your index? Can you trade the S&P futures? After all, Planned Parenthood's in them. Tough question. Mumma, a boutique brokerage firm, issues research on Planned Parenthood and makes a market in Planned Parenthood stock. It's a significant part of its business. Do you have to sell it? But it's a publicly traded brokerage stock. Do you have to sell Mumma? More complicated. I'll call them code yellow. I think you have to think about it. Keep moving. Can you buy T-bills? The federal government is raising money to pump into Planned Parenthood. Can you buy T-bills? I don't know. Bank of New York is the market maker and research issuer for Planned Parenthood. Do you have to sell Bank of New York? You would have sold Mumma on Mumma, sad to say, but would you sell Bank of New York? Pretty big stock. Let me end on one note. Is there anything you can do with Planned Parenthood that doesn't cause you to question from an SRI standpoint? I'll say one thing. When Fieler and family launches the Fieler Bear Claw Fund dedicated to shorting Planned Parenthood, I think you can invest in that. So here's my point. I've taken one obvious low-hanging fruit, which is Planned Parenthood, and stretched it down the chain to the point where it gets harder and harder to answer the questions. But go left and right to Philip Morris or a gun manufacturer, to the supplier who is really just end-of-the-chain supplier, to an ETF that has 35 stocks in it, and one of which is, a tobacco stock. So my point to you is I don't think SRI, although interesting from a standpoint of, moral reasoning, doesn't lend itself to any of us to bring every day to our job.